Human trafficking is an issue in Maine, and more resources for victims are on the way. Penquis has been awarded funding from the U.S. Department of Justice to increase access to housing for survivors of human trafficking. In addition, the $615,000 grant will help with the training provided by the Penquis Sex and Labor Trafficking Action Response Team. The training is focused on helping victims gain a sense of safety and stability. In 2021, more than 150 survivors of human trafficking were helped in the greater Bangor area. Rape Response Services says these resources are crucial for the recovery of survivors.
We know that survivors of human trafficking and really survivors of any form of sexual violence really need to have their basic needs met in order to move forward with addressing trauma and achieving long-term safety. And as we know in the community right now, housing needs are really critical. So this funding will allow us to help address those needs.
Our hope is that we can engage landlords that we could potentially partner with and offer education about what the needs of survivors are, how we'll be engaging in supports with survivors to ensure that their experience with housing is successful, and how we provide advocacy and support, and as well as the support that we can offer to landlords to make sure that the situations are successful and that housing is stable.
For more information on services available to survivors of human trafficking or on training opportunities, contact the Sex and Labor Trafficking Action Response Team at startatpenquis.org.